Time for some AAA, and we're going to start with the A that's likely to show up most on your exam, that being authentication. We are going to spend the vast majority of our time with authentication. We have authorization and accounting to follow. We'll spend a few minutes with each, making sure we know exactly what the differences are, but your configs, we're going to do mostly authentication. Now, authentication, that's the process of actually deciding if so-and-so should be allowed to access the network or the network service, period. And as a CCNA and a future CCNP, you've already configured authentication in the form of a local database of username and passwords. We'll do a little review on that on the live equipment as well. But if you're running AAA and you are only using that local database that's on the same device, that's what we call a self-contained AAA deployment because no external device is involved. For the majority of your AAA deployments, you are going to have an external device involved. It's more scalable, frankly, and you're going to turn to either TACX Plus or Radius. Now, TACX Plus, that is a Cisco proprietary TCP-based protocol, port 49 that is, and Radius is an open standard UDP-based protocol that uses ports 1812 and 1813, and it was originally developed by the IETF. Now, first thing you're thinking when you look at this, especially if you're new to it, is saying, okay, what happened to TACX? Did it stink? Why do we have a TACX Plus? Did we once have a TACX Minus? Well, we really didn't. TACX was the original version of the protocol, but it's very rarely used today, so we don't have to concern ourselves with that version. But what we do have to concern ourselves with is some major differences between the two. The first one being that TACX Plus encrypts the entire packet, and Radius encrypts only the password in the initial client-server packet. Sounds like a vote for TACX Plus to me. Now, Radius combines the authentication and authorization processes. And at first, that sounds like a good thing. They're in one process. We only have to configure one. It doesn't really work that way because it makes it very difficult to run one process without running the other. It usually ends up being an unnecessary hit to your device. TACX Plus runs each A as a separate process, which allows another method of authentication to be used if you want to do that while still using TACX for authorization and or accounting. Radius cannot control the authorization level of users, but TACX Plus can. Now, regardless of which of the A's you're working with, and you're going to hear this a couple times, AAA must first be enabled with the global command AAA new model. What we're going to do then is declare the location of the TACX Plus or Radius server and or Radius server. We can use both, along with a shared encryption key. We're going to look at that config right now, and just a quick word about the AAA new model command. First off, if it didn't show up on your exam somehow, I would be shocked. But you don't have to run it every single time you're working with AAA. You only have to do it the first time. So if you go back and you're adding a server or something like that, it's not like you have to put AAA new model in again. So here we've got TACX server and a Radius server. We have two different keys, two different locations, and we'll go ahead and put all of these commands on the live equipment because then we're going to start looking at the default authentication list we're going to create. But a quick note, when you enable AAA with AAA new model, it also overrides every previously configured authentication method for the router lines or the switch lines, especially the VTY lines. And I'm going to prove that outlandish claim to you later in this section. I'm not just going to tell you, I'm going to show it to you. But right now, let's go ahead and get started with a fundamental config on our multi-layer switch. Unrecognized command for Radius server. That's not good. How about TACX server? Well, we get some stuff there. The reason that we were getting Radius server there is if you start running AAA commands, especially say that you create the default list, which we're going to do in a moment, you're going to start getting unrecognized command where you don't expect to see them. And what we want to do first is go back here and enable AAA. Now let's try that Radius server command. And you'll notice all of a sudden we start getting the choices, and AAA is actually mentioned in a couple of those. So Radius server, all we're going to do right now is specify the host, and that's going to be for Radius at 10.115. And as you can see, tons of choices here. So believe me, you are just getting a taste of what you can do with authentication right now. So we're going to go with key. And notice it even mentions a per server encryption key overrides default. So that is a good thing to remember. And we're just going to put CCIE for that one. And notice this because I did some research on this for you. This is a very recent iOS version. And notice it says, this command line interface command is going to be gotten rid of soon. Please move to radius server name and then use that particular command or leave the dash out. For this, for your exam purposes, I did check, I looked in Cisco Press's book, looked at their PDFs, everything else. And everything they have is with the command radius server with the hyphen in it. They're not going to get that picky on your exam anyway, believe me. But I want you to see, you do get these messages in real life sometimes. Hey, this command you've been using for 15 years, we're about to get rid of that. You ought to move to something else. But I don't want you to get worried about the exam because radius server is what you're going to see there with the hyphen. So let's see. We've got a radius server. Let's put a TACX server in there. You do just put TACX server. It's not TACX plus server. I don't want to keep putting sever. But let's go with 10113 key CCNP. And what did I do wrong there? I left the word host out. And you'll notice it's telling you there, hey, we're getting rid of this command line interface command. You'll need to use the new one. But again, for your CCNP switch exam, these are the commands you're going to see. So let's see. We've got the locations of the servers defined. Now we need to start defining what methods we're going to use for authentication. And we do that with the AAA authentication command. And to tell you what, this is probably going to go over the 20-minute mark if I start this particular part now. So I'm going to stop this video and we'll pick up on the very next video with the default authentication list. I'll see you there.